Welcome in, chess enthusiasts. We are going to talk today about this old guy. That is an old photo of a player that invented a very popular chess opening. As is typical these days, the opening is more famous and known than the players themselves. Just ask Nimzowitsch, Sveshnikov, Grunfeld, and Maroczy. Those are all chess players. And today we're going to talk about the inventor of the Evans Gambit, which is Captain William Evans. This game was played, first game, in 1826. He was a captain of a ship. They had docked for a little while, and he was playing against a top player from Ireland, MacDonald. Um, this game is not the exact Evans Gambit proper, as we know it today, but rather a slight iteration. And then 3 years later, we will see the true Evans Gambit unveiled. But I thought both of these are significant. So let's jump right in. This starts with the typical Italian, and Evans, of course, is white. Here, now our well-known Evans Gambit today would go with the move b4, right here. Shocking move if you've never seen it. But Evans, at the time, 1826, remember, played castles kingside. Natural move. Here, d6, and now b4. b4. Now, I'm going to try to hold off on the computer analysis. Remember, it's 1826. Let's give these guys a bit of a break with our high-tech computers and analysis. Not going to do that to them, but rather just try to enjoy and understand some of the tactics and ideas behind the opening. But you can already see quite an inventive player Evans was, giving the pawn for central control. Remember, this is before the time of Morphy. Morphy, I don't believe, was even born. So we're way back in time, and some nice creativity from Captain Evans here. Here we go. Bishop g4, queen b3. Still a pretty modern approach. Obviously, we're threatening the pawn on f7 with the bishop. We're threatening the pawn on b7 potentially. We also unpin our knight. And here, I think, is where things maybe start to slip a little bit. Queen d7, for black, I should say, which does guard the knight. So queen takes b7 has a lot less sting to it. Knight g5, and a good move there by Evans, attacking the f7 square for a third time. Queen, bishop, and knight now, all three attacking, and there's only two defenders. So that forced black, well, I shouldn't say forced, but black chose to play knight d8. I would say the first real error in the game. Again, not going to be too critical of them, but a much more natural move, and the engine's top choice was knight h6, guarding the pawn while developing a piece. So knight d8 it is. That guards both pawns, b7 and f7, but a very passive move. Next move was pawn takes pawn on e5, and by the way, the best engine move. Again, like I said, we won't be too critical, but I do like to highlight when they play the best engine moves. Again, this game was 200 years ago, give or take, and it's just astonishing to me that great players still were playing what today's top engines think is the best move. So I like this move also, bishop a3. Oftentimes this bishop will prevent your opponent from castling, which is a good thing, and it didn't have too many prospects going out this way, so bishop a3 makes sense. I will say the engine points out a stellar move of sacrificing, which is all based on, after a bunch of captures on f7, the move queen b5 check and take the bishop. So for example, bishop f7, this was not played in the game, but knight f7, queen f7, and then queen b7, or even queen b5, queen b7, and then queen b5. So that was possible but not played. Again, Engine's giving us the benefit of hindsight. And here we go, knight h6 played in the game, f3. Again, the Engine's more or less top move or two, very close between f3 and h3. But the point here is now that rook d1, which is guarded by our queen, rook d1 is coming, and that's going to bring another piece into the attack, another threat on the queen, another tempo gained. Bishop to b6 is check. King h1 nice and safe. Bishop retreats, and there is rook d1. Let's count the attacking pieces. We have a great bishop, queen, bishop, rook, and knight. All 5 pieces well placed, attacking. Only these pieces still are left undeveloped, but quite an army white has. Queen c8, not a fun move to play. And here Evans really didn't play the best move. Queen b5 was the best move here. But let's keep going. Rook takes d8. Queen takes d8. Knight takes f7. And again, a lot of this potentially based on this queen check and taking the e-pawn. Here, actually the Engine gives roughly equal, but the biggest mistake of the game now by Black was queen h4, double question mark move. And here the Engine finds checkmate in 3. So if you want to pause here and look for mate in 3, I'm going to show you now. He didn't play all the best moves, but I think 4 moves. Bishop to b5 was mate in 3, but this happens 1 move slower. Queen b5, queen e5, and remember again, this bishop still playing an important role. It only made 1 move, and it's really endangering the king. This bishop guarding the knight, and the king is really limited in moves. King d7, queen e6, only legal move is king c7, and bishop d6 checkmate. Wow, 20 moves, demolition of, like we said, the strongest player from Ireland. Evans wins a very nice game. Let's move to the second game, but I did want to mention many games were played on these ships and boats or when they docked, and a lot of them just weren't documented, as you might expect. So it's really a treat that we got to see these games as they were notated. In the old notation, I would assume. Pawn to king 4, pawn to king 4. And this next game was played just 3 years later. And the same opponent, Evans again white, and making a slight improvement on the previous game, he now plays in this position the very first instance of what we know today as the Evans Gambit, b4. Not what I would call a brilliancy, but I thought it was entertaining for the purposes of the video here. So let's take a look. This is the first game ever with the proper Evans Gambit. The game we're looking at here was played in 1829. The previous game just 3 years prior. So 1829, that's where we are in chess history. c3, bishop c5. Actually, a slight inaccuracy. Nowadays, the most common move, bishop to a5, and perhaps there's a few other options, bishop e7. But bishop a5, I believe, is best. Bishop c4, really, c5, I should say, really just walks right back into what we're expecting d4. Now, I like what he does first, which is castle. And you're going to see we build up a lot of tempos threatening the black pieces in a moment. Had he played d4 right away, the problem, which we solved by castling, is really that black is just going to answer all of this with another check. We'll block the check, but again, it just slows us down for a moment, although white's position still looks comfortable. So castling first, knight f6, very natural move, and then d4. So that's pretty much the point of the Evans Gambit, and the point of most gambits is to give material, hopefully not too much, a pawn or two, and then you use the time, the moves that black uses. Black has to use a move to capture and a move to retreat. You use those moves to gain space in the center, gain the momentum or initiative of the game, develop extra pieces, whatever the opening requires. So here we go, capture, capture, bishop b6, and by the way, if it's your turn and you have this unopposed center like this, you're really in good shape. Black even had one pawn in the center, it would change things greatly, but here just the pawns steamroll all the black pieces. And yes, d5, a common move still today in many of these king pawn openings. So kudos to black for playing such a modern move so long ago. But it was probably born out of necessity, as any knight move is really running low on squares. You don't want to go back home. You don't want to go to the edge of the board. Knight g4 runs probably right into h3 if we don't have something better. So d5 does make sense. En passant, I don't even know if that was a rule back then, I assume so, but was not played. Capture, capture, rook e1 check. Very nicely done. I suppose here we could have also played f takes g7, rook g8, and then rook e1. Might have been slightly more accurate, but already the engine is loving white's position here, and the Evans Gambit is a huge success. So king f8, bishop a3, there it is again. Same piece, same square, and well, it looks like black tried to castle, but forgot to move the rook. The king is just buried in there, can't even move. And here, another really nice move. Actually, the engine's top move again. So how many of us would just play pawn takes g7 here? I think almost everyone. A really nice understanding d5. And again, the knight has just very few options. You can't go here or forward. You don't want to return home. He plays knight a5. Very unfortunate. And I am really amazed by the next move or series of moves and how accurate they are and how good these players were. Like I said, nearly 200 years ago, this game. So I just want to take this time to recommend to all improving chess players and viewers here to look at games from these old days. They're more on a level that you can understand. If you want to watch Magnus versus Hikaru and Geary versus Wesley, those are great games, but you're not going to understand them too much, nor do I. It's really just computer versus computer. They're so strong. These games are much more human in their tactics and defenses and easier for all of us to understand. Start with the old games as you're developing that understanding. Okay, queen d7, not a fun square. You're blocking the bishop. The rook is buried. The knight, terrible on the edge. This rook, we don't even need to mention. It's all going wrong here for black. F takes g7. Remember, this bishop is guarded, so no worries there. And, well, the rook is under attack and can't move, so king takes is the only sensible human move. And another really nice move, queen d2. Evans had a real understanding of attacking. Again, remember, this is before Paul Morphy. Before Morphy. So what did players know about attacking? There weren't chess books to speak of. Everything was so local. If you didn't have strong players around you, how do you even get good? So it's really remarkable to me. What is queen d2 trying to do? Well, queen g5 is simply checkmate. Pretty serious threat. So queen g4 guards against that, but it also, this nice move, gets on these dark squares. Remember, from our home square d1, we weren't able to really check the king in a comfortable way. But here we were threatening mate, but also the next move, queen c3. Taking advantage here of the diagonal, a check, can't really be blocked comfortably without losing material. And king g8, not the best move, but an understandable one. And I'd really like you to pause the video here and try to work out the following sequence. It is white to move. It is checkmate in 3 by force. Okay, spectacular finish to this game. I'm gonna go ahead and show that now, but what a move. Queen takes h8. Queen takes the rook. A queen sacrifice, epic proportions here to start the life, so to speak, of the Evans Gambit. What a move. And from there, of course, you wouldn't give your queen without working out the rest. Bishop f6, only 2 legal moves, king g8, or he played in the game queen g7. Both of them run straight into, please don't take the queen, this runs straight into rook e8, checkmate. This is a fantastic game, and both of them were won by Evans in just 20 moves. The first one, a slight iteration of the Evans Gambit, but this game here, 3 years later, the proper Evans Gambit unveiled for the very first time, and what a success. What did this do to the chess world? Well, it was met with much fanfare, much popularity, and the Evans Gambit was adopted by all the best players, right? And we're not talking about Magnus and Bobby Fischer. This, again, players you may have heard of, but this was the time of Le Bourdonnais, of Anderson, and even Morphy himself. So Howard Staunton, I believe, as well. So those players in that kind of pre-Morphy era all started playing b4 as a very aggressive, useful gambit. And once in a while, you'll see this even rolled out today, often as a surprise weapon. So I hope you enjoyed this interesting video about chess history, some nice games, and just one last reminder, if you look at some of these old players, they were good, really good, and it's worth learning from them as well, because again, today's modern top chess players are just on such a different level than all of us. So I hope that helps. I hope this was instructional and fun, and we'll talk soon.
Go ahead.
Again?